Here are 5 things you should probably never say to anyone who is facing an organ transplant. Number 1, you're so lucky to be getting a transplant. No, absolutely not. If and when anyone ever received the wonderful gift of life via a transplant of any sort, that's not luck, that's not chance, that's not happenstance. That only comes by the very blessing of God. In addition to that, I don't know that anyone should feel, quote, lucky for getting a transplant. Do you not realize that facing an organ transplant of any kind ultimately already states a fact, which is that you are in some severe stage of organ failure, that it is the case that without that transplant coming, that there's no possible way that you could live a viable, healthy, successful life? That's what transplant really means. Don't you realize that transplant, going through the process itself, is a very dangerous situation that's kind of left with an uphill battle of struggles for the rest of your life just to try to live? That's the truth about it. So I would never say that anyone is lucky for receiving a transplant. Blessed if they get the opportunity, yes, but luck is never a part of the equation. Number 2, never say to them, I know exactly how you feel. No, you do not know exactly how they feel. It doesn't even matter if you are a transplant recipient yourself. I mean by that, you have been there and you're currently doing that. There is absolutely no possible way that you could know exactly how they feel. Yes, we're going to have some feelings, some emotions, some situations, some scenarios that are going to be very similar. And because of that, we can have a level of camaraderie, a level of friendship and companionship that develops out of that. But at the end of the day, everybody's situation is so individualized, so different, that there's no way that anyone could ever know exactly how we feel. Now, again, there are similarities, but we're just not the same. Number 3, never say, don't worry, everything's going to be just fine. Albeit being positive is a very important part of the transplant process, and for that matter, every part of life. At the end of the day, there is a perspective through which we always have to see reality, okay? Everything may not always be fine. As I like to say in the South, it won't always be hunky-dory. It won't always be a bed of roses. Going through the transplant process itself, particularly the recovery and the lifetime sustaining acts that you're going to have to go through from now on, is never going to be a bed of roses. So because of that, you can't say that things are going to be just fine. You can say to someone something to the effect of, I'm praying for you, I'm praying that things will be just fine, or that I hope that they will be just fine. But you cannot make that guarantee. And although I know that seems to be a stretch to some of us who are not dealing with a situation, when you're in the moment, telling someone things are going to be just fine basically says to them, why don't you believe I believe that? Do you think I'm being negative? No, not really. Number 4, never say, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. I understand the sentiment of that, and I appreciate that to one level, but to another extent, don't ever tell someone that you feel, quote, sorry for them, when it's probably the case they're already feeling sorry for themselves. You know, there are many other things you can say than that. That is just not the most appropriate at any moment, and making someone feel worse about their situation or letting them know that you're overly sympathetic for them can sometimes make them feel even weaker in their state. You know, I can remember when I was going through the whole transplant process, and really even since, to have someone that every time they see me, they always say something to that effect, that I'm sorry you're dealing with this, I'm sorry you're going through this, or how are you feeling, how are you doing? That's not the question we want to be asked. Many times we just want to be treated as if we are absolutely normal like anybody else. Find something else to talk about, in most cases something else to say, because this is more times than not just not the right thing. Number 5, never say to anyone, you are so brave. Wow. No, we don't want to hear that either. And the reason behind that is the fact that we're not doing this just for the fact of being brave. Now, there is no doubt in my mind that facing an organ transplant or the life that comes with that does take a tremendous amount of courage. There is a fact in which we have to be warriors in order to endure that. But in most cases, even though to you we may appear to be brave on the surface, that's just simply not the case. That's generally not what's really going on down inside of us. And to be reminded how brave we are sometimes just points out our weakness when we know ourselves better than anyone else could, and we see those frailties going on in our hearts and minds. And to be reminded of how brave we are even when we're basically scared out of our britches, it's just not the good thing to say. So now, knowing all the things we should not say, what exactly should we do for someone who is facing an organ transplant? The best thing you can do is to put your literal physical arms around them, give them a hug, a pat on the shoulder, a level of encouragement, something like that. Let them know that you are there for them, you're praying for them, and that you will be with them there for the long haul. And just don't simply say that. That should not be lip service. That should be something that you're absolutely willing to stand by, because I can tell you from experience, not only my own, but from thousands of other people I've come in contact with in similar situations, oftentimes it's really the case that people abandon us when we get in our toughest times. I get that that's a difficult time. They don't know what to say or how to say or what to do. And many times it's kind of a burden on them to try to deal with our burdens. But we as human beings have to be supportive. We have to be willing to uplift one another and bear those burdens up in many cases. And oftentimes we just don't have that. So be that person that stands beside us, behind us, before us, however you want to see that, to support us in everything that we do, and actually be there, not to just speak words, but to do things that can impact our lives. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, stay stronger, my friend.